Sunday school teacher, I'm glad that you've joined us for our time of study. We are working on our study for the Sunday of August the 6th. We continue in our series studying the book of Psalms. And this Sunday, August 6th, we will be studying a lesson entitled The Confession. And we will be looking at Psalm 51. Psalm 51 is where we'll be. The confession is the title of the lesson, and the point, what we're trying to achieve, want our people to walk away with, is that the realization of sin should move us to confession and repentance. And so we're going to be in Psalm chapter 51. In this Psalm, Psalm 51, King David is expressing the depths of his guilt surrounding the adulterous affair that he had, and he's also confessing his awareness that the Lord could be the only one that could forgive him and restore him. And we also see King David calling out for the Lord to cleanse him, not only forgive him, but to help him be clean from what he has done. So that's the background for the passage, and the hope and the prayer is that as we look at what David said, that it will help us to face our own sinful behavior and turn to the Lord for forgiveness. So I imagine that as you teach this Bible study and lead this session, that you're going to have some folks in your group that are in need of this Bible study, Psalm 51. Now, a little bit further background, I've put it in your notes, but I would also encourage you to think about adding a little bit of understanding of the background, what happened with David. You can see that listed in 2 Samuel chapters 11 and 12. And I've given you that quick summary in your notes. It says, David was at home in Jerusalem while his armies were away at battle. He was on the rooftop of the palace, and he looked down from the rooftop and he saw one of his soldiers' wife bathing at her home, and when he saw her, he wanted her, and so he sent messengers, and they brought her back to the palace. There he slept with her, and Bathsheba became pregnant. And to cover up his sin, David said, I'm going to bring the soldier home. I'm going to bring him home so that this homesick soldier will spend time with his wife and will later assume that he has fathered a child. Well, the soldier refused to come home, and so to cover up even more worse, David said, well, let's send him to the front line, and that way he will surely die. And sure enough, the soldier was killed, and so David did what he thought was right, and that was to bring the mother of his child to be his wife and live in the palace. But that was not right in God's eyes. It was still sin. And so God spoke to the prophet Nathan, and Nathan went and confronted David. And when Nathan confronted David with his sin, David confessed his sin and repented. And so that's the situation that leads up to what is said in Psalm 51. So you might want to quickly lay that foundation. I'm sure it's a story that everyone knows in your group, but you may have some that don't know. And so I've given you, a couple of points there to really summarize that. So let's look at these verses and see the confession, what happens after Nathan comes to confront David. In verses 1 through 5, we see David say, yes, I'm guilty as charged. He says, be gracious to me, God, according to your faithful love, according to your abundant compassion. Blot out my rebellion, wash away my guilt, and cleanse me from my sin. For I am conscious of my rebellion, and my sin is always before me. Against you and you alone have I sinned, and have done this evil in your sight. So you are right when you pass sentence. You are blameless when you judge. And then verse 5 says, Indeed, I was guilty when I was born. I was sinful when my mother conceived me. So here we see David saying, yes, I am guilty as charged. And David begins by saying, be gracious to me, God. And the word for God, the title, the name that David uses here is the name God, which is the name of authority. The one that is above him, the God of authority. This is not him coming to worship God. This is him coming to